Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Venus, our soul day. And the Sun is conjoining Zendaya, releasing from opposition to Saturn and Neptune. And Moon is 18 degrees Sag. Ascendant ruled by Saturn, midheaven ruled by Mars. And Mars is separating from the closing square with Pluto. So there's a lot going on. Jupiter is on the 22nd. And Uranus is conjoining Sedna. But I actually want to talk about Aries, because when we had Aries conjoining Uranus, we had the Me Too. Aries is that which was disincluded and is willing to cause tremendous chaos to basically become included, or basically to have what the Aries interest address. And Uranus is a revolution, Kundalini rise, reactionary, but also ideology. And the Me Too was the time where the value that was disincluded from the table, which was sexual sovereignty, basically made a big fucking chaos in the entire world to be included. Now, if I think about Aries-Uranus cycle, we're about to have, in 7 years, the Uranus sextile, and we're already building up to it. So we want to think about the suffragist, and the suffragist is kind of interesting. In between wars, the wars arise in suffragist, LGBTQ, women rights, and so on, but it seemed like the world was not ready for that. And then there was Second World War. Now, there was the dark occult that was inspired by Aleister Crowley that the Nazi used. And they basically put the suffragists in concentration camps. They raped them and they took their creative power. Basically, the reason they did that because they wanted to basically harvest their creative energy so that it will be of use to the Nazis to control the world. What it actually did was killed all the people that were not ready for women's right to vote. Now, I really wish that those things didn't need to happen in that way, but this is the real horror and awkwardness that we see. Basically, the ridicule of violence, because anyway women would need the right to vote. Anyway women would need sexual sovereignty. Do we want to kill the entire, does the whole world have to die for that to happen? And I said that during the Me Too. But I didn't have the knowledge about the occult. In fact, the person I learned about that from was actually a person who would later try to traffic me and harvest my own creative energy, which is done by astral rape. And yeah, and that's basically created me writing a satire about the cult. Not willing to litigate because I wanted to get to the core of the issue and to actually have change, and not actually, not have to deal with people that are anyway a part of the rapists or the trafficking cult. And basically, they were really letting in on the ideology. And so when they talked about the Second World War, they talked about the fact that after 2 generations of men died, women ran businesses alone, and then they got the right to vote. It also makes sense because a lot of women didn't really think, I saw with the Me Too, older generation, they were as sexually harassing as men sometimes, and they were just not in such positions of power or something, and they were just like, they were cool with the men. They were like, the Me Too went too far, and God knows what they were invested in, but the whole concept of having their yes, no, and maybe respected was not there neither for the men nor for the women. So you think about these women, when women learn to communicate with their vagina, understanding that it's not just taking the oats, and the oats, it's also having sex that is actually willingly consensual, or not having sex, which is also okay, or having self pleasure that is embodied without people trying to steal the creative energy or doing dumb fuckery stuff. And those, both those men that found that weird because they were harvesting on women's energy, and those women that some of them were harvesting on the energy of men, and they were like, they were not really cool with that because they gained something from women not being, like, they couldn't see a woman tending to that because it evoked the demons within them. And it's like, okay, that's human on the one hand. On the other hand, they can't kill an entire generation of women either. And so with the Me Too, we kind of had a situation as similar. Women understood that their sexual energy is not only connected to their sense of well-being and joy of living, but also to their ability to have their own wealth and manifest their own creation, whether it's creation of something material, or creation of a house, or creation of a baby, or creation as a part of the joy of living. And the thing is that the people that were not partaking in those satanic ritual abuse ceremonies, they wanted life, and the minute that they began to recover from sexual boundary violation, they ran into even therapists that were dumbfounded. The entire treatment, like the entire opportunity to reconnect with oneself, evoked all the demons in all the industry that relied on sexual boundary violation. And we are now finding out that that was all the industry. Watch where the private equity is at, and you'll see that that's an industry that relied on rituals that have to do with satanic ritual abuse, theft of creative energy, rape, and ritual murder of infants as well. So I don't know what's going to happen with Saturn, Neptune, and the private equity. I know that there is one actually woman, founder of Blackstone, that was murdered. It was assassinated. And again, we're talking about a time where women would get their way up by putting other women down. So they were learning from the men, but they were learning. It's kind of like learning. It's kind of like having an operating system that is learning all the mistakes of Macintosh and Microsoft at the same time. Like it did things in the world, but it also learned the bad stuff from the man. Um, and actually, right before 7th of October, I remember I had a conversation with Cameron, who was a colleague, and I said to him, I feel women, we learned how to rebel from men and how to take our rights from men. And it's not a bad thing, but we really need to also learn something different, because the only way we know how to stand for our rights is learning from men. And Man had also made mistakes. So, and then, ritual rape, 7th of October, um, and the end, whatever, the dumb fuckery that happened later that is beyond terrible, particularly because, why would anybody go to war over oil and gas when we are going into solar energy? Like, the only reason that there is a delay is because all of John D. Rockefeller's empire feared job loss, which is totally understandable, but we could build a dam. I wanted to build a dam um, uh, around the Dead Sea, and they want to take the oil from there. They're doing the worst possible method, and I'm like, hey, why not just build a dam and we can harvest like solar energy, reforest and remineralize the area. It takes a lot, all these people could get these jobs, um, and that's funneling money from the governments that actually do something good for the citizens. And it also take care that there are less mouths to feed because everybody will be after the R&R. I don't know if the Rockefellers had what the Rothschild endured. I need to research that. But there was a reason that they began to do charity. Let's just say that. But they were afraid to be assassinated. And, John D. Rockefeller began as an aromatherapist or something, like with oil, it began with this type of herbs, but then he patented them. And again, he worked in a certain environment and he responded to that environment and got scrutinized. Um, but it doesn't have to be this way. It can actually be different. There's a lot of people in the new well transition that want to actually make a contribution to the world. So coming from having to survive in a really inhumane world, which is where John D. Rockefeller was born, to the Gilded Age, and then doing charity because it's trying to adapt to a world that seems unfamiliar from the perspective of people who came with either they're going to be tossed with the rest of the people. Now, there was actually a suggestion to give lethal injections to the homeless. Now, first of all, there's a problem with the lethal injections. Now, as the person that looks into weapon industry, I did I do understand that weapon needs to be um, the least painful for the war to be ethical, but this is just a war on people. The homeless in the United States are basically the targeted individuals that didn't know how to do witchcraft. That's basically it. Now, for people, if somebody targets you, grab yourself a potato and a needle and stab them back. That's basically how it works. It's not complicated. Again, don't ever direct that as somebody who didn't do it. Always say, send it to original sender, known and unknown. Original sender only, not the people he works through, not the people that he attacks to make believe that it's them, and so on and so forth. And basically, everybody has the right to defend themselves, but never do that on an innocent person because they're going to stab you back and it's going to hurt and you won't have something to defend you on an energy level because it's going to be like you're working with the darkness. Now, as usual, if somebody is not physically harming me to the way I have to, I don't know, protect myself, then I always wish well on my enemies and I say, hurt people, and I bless an enemy, but I would also defend myself because not to defend myself is basically to say that my life is worthless, and that's not true. But most of these targeted individuals, and that's what happened to me in 2019. I was severely attacked Then I was in between houses. Fortunately, I had some assistance, but then there were attempts to recruit me or to traffic me or to get me to do crime, and I'm like, well, the most I did was stealing some sushi from the Albert Heijn. There was no food, and to go to the other town and so on. There was a lot of police when we come out of that with the sushi and all. We had a lot of police. I believe the spirit of some journalist there was probably with me because, but even that, let me tell you that I felt that it drains my energy. So the minute I got a housing and there was an environmental fridge, I just began to turn the soil and to grow food and to take the food from the environmental fridge. There are still stupid folks that try to stab me. That's incredibly stupid. In fact, if one is so in such a hopeless situation that they want to be targeting individual, what they should be doing is the one that sent them to be targeting individual, they should actually stab them. They should actually attack the attackers. You see, there's a meme that said two people in the kingdom, and they stand in front of a crowd and really afraid to be attacked by the crowd, and then the queen says to the king, we don't have to fight them. All we have to do is convince the pitchfork folks that the ones with, I don't know, the wheat wants to take their pitchfork. So you see, if you think I'm in for your pitchfork, then I'm not. Okay? I'm not coming to take your pitchfork directed to the people that actually create that chaos, because they want both of our creative energy and to take over the land and the soil and to do dumb fuckery things with that. They're not even going to develop the place because anyway, it's all our ideas and they want to capitalize and monetize those ideas. But the way they do that, and you think about private equity, you say, what's wrong with private equity? You take a place, you renovate the place, you sell the place, you upscale the place. Nothing wrong except that they don't actually do that. And this is because they're doing rituals of sacrifice and all kind of bloodletting and all kind of dumb fuckeries. It's not the private equity, because everybody could participate in private. Everybody can take a yard that is a junkyard and turn it into a gold. In fact, that's what I did with the backyard of a place that I was renting. I was raising the value of the property. But I wasn't thinking even in those terms. I was just thinking, hey, that's a junkyard and the world's gonna need food. So if there's a water problem, why not remineralize the area and so on and so forth. But people want to harvest the oil from here. And I'm like, wait, folks, grow fucking forest. Let that place let that place grow minerals, let that place grow gold, let that place grow, and then when you actually need something, then you can harvest a little bit and you have plenty. Being inspired by my astrology magic teacher, Christopher Warnock. Okay, I was not official student of anybody because after the Me Too, I never put myself in situation of like there was in academia again. But I do give credit if I learned an idea from someone, then I do give credit and I do honor them. And when Christopher Warnock worked on his hidden wealth talisman, basically he said a leaf is best hidden in the forest. So when everybody has enough, then nobody's after what anybody has. People are too busy living their good life. But if people are if people are not aware that they can make money by growing a forest and they can ethically harvest the minerals, and the minerals are best left in the hands of the people, because once the silver and gold are in the bank, then the currency value, the more silver and gold they have, the currency value drops, and then we have an inflation. That's what happened to Spain. Then the Dutchies took their silver. They were actually doing a good thing. They stole the silver, and then the Dutchies built an economy with that, while the Spanish had to rely on thieves in order to balance their currency, because they wouldn't give up the silver, right? They wouldn't give up the gold. Um, but if the people had the silver and the gold, they could maintain it. They could maintain it because that would be in their hands and not in the bank's hands, and then the currency would have value, not too high, not too low, would be a stable currency, and the people, if God forbid something happens, then they can trade the silver. A lot of people go for silver and gold, and again, you know what, I'm thinking if I'll have my chance to do it next month, maybe I'll do that with silver. Silver is actually the metal of the moon. So night chart silver, day chart maybe gold, but you can see for some people both work. Is actually to buy two jewelries of silver and hand one to a homeless person, because that's the value that's actually, because I totally agree with people that we know with homelessness can come a lot of addictions and a lot of stuff. But when a person has a gold or has a silver, they have to think twice. And I'll let you in on something. Buy that with a mint oil and give them that with a mint oil. Now they have something to keep and something to help them keep that. So this is something that, this is something that is actually useful, because the more people know how to manage with resources, the less draining on the resources there is. For example, if John D. Rockefeller would know that he could reforest the area of the Dead Sea rather than drain the oil, and then he would remineralize the area, he would get a lot less scrutiny from people around the oil thingy, and then he could have solar energy harvesting. And now, not only that, if each and every person that digs the half moons and digs the dams have themselves, I don't know, a house from stones or a house from, whatever ecosystemic materia, and have a small house, there's enough place for all the people who would work there, then basically what happens is that not only people would not scrutinize him, he would have less mouth to feed, and he wouldn't have to worry about his employees being homeless or not having a job. Nobody have to fear about losing his power, because now it would build not only power but legacy. Everybody remembers the Medicis because of Leonardo da Vinci. And Leonardo da Vinci was actually designing some of the first dams. Okay, I know the duchies, of course, but besides the duchies, some of the first bridges, some of the first dams, some of the first structures that were good in times of war and were good in times of peace to be infrastructure, that was the design of Leonardo da Vinci. And that's already building legacy, not just the art, but also the sciences. That's the opportunity that the Rockefellers are at, and they would need to change the rituals around wealth consolidation, because they don't have to bring the lower astral to gain wealth. And that's a change that, if the Rockefeller would do it, then they'll gain from that. If not, some other wealth family would do it. And that's just that.